Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 149 of the Terminal City FC podcast, part of the Area 51 Sports Network. Josh Ray joined alongside Nathan Derrick as per usual, talking all things soccer. And we're once again live on the Area 51 Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages. So if you're checking out there, hello. So starting off with the Vancouver Whitecaps, 4 points in 2 games. And these are big points considering how tight the Western Conference is in terms of the playoff race. But let's start with Saturday's win over the San Jose Earthquakes. Comfortable 2-0 win.
Easily
Could have been
comfortable.
more, but in the end, they got the win.
Yeah.
Easy.
Easily comfortable. Dominant game. Expected dominant game. I mean, you're playing the last place team, not only in the Western Conference, but in the entire league. They've only got, 5 wins all season? I
5
actually
wins,
didn't.
yeah.
How did they? No, did they end up winning last night?
No,
Not
they
too sure.
ended up drawing Seattle.
They ended up drawing Seattle. They were winning at one point.
They tied it up really late.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Easy game, killed it off. Fantastic performances from everyone. A few players did notably stand out. Pedro Vite, Alessandro Schopf. I thought really bossed that midfield. The number of interceptions, the number of ball recoveries from Schopf was phenomenal, and the creation from Vite. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to wonder, like, it wasn't even about breaking lines. It was just like through butter, right? It was just he was able to see the pass before he even had the ball, and it was really nice to see. Everything kind of clicked.
Yeah, everything clicked.
Line was phenomenal. They didn't have a whole lot of work to do, but when they did, they were alerts. Takioka didn't have a lot of work to do, but its distribution started a lot of the breakouts. And Pico has been flying.
Yeah, and mentioned Schuff and Pedro Vite both. Yeah, once again made great tackles, ball recoveries. Vite too with his passing and creativity could have had multiple assists in the game. And yeah, Fafa Pico, he gets the first goal off his head from the corner in the first half, and that's 9 goals for him on the season. Career high is 11, which he did with Houston a few years ago. But
he almost had another one fading back with another header, but he put it off the crossbar.
Yeah, so he's 2 away from tying his career high in goals, but in terms of goal contributions, including last night, it's like 16, which is a career high.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to think that many people, including us, thought Fafa Pico was a strange signing because the fit, we couldn't really see it, but it has been, he's fit in like a glove, and it's crazy to think he's 34 and is having arguably the best season of his career.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, it did take a little bit for him to fit.
Yeah, it did.
Right? It did take a little bit. He had to understand a new system. He had to understand a bit of a new position, kind of. But once, and it seemed like there was a little bit of frustration on both sides, but once it clicked, once he started getting a string of games where he was able to build up that consistency and that understanding, I mean, he's been off to the races.
Yeah, and his ability to win the one-on-one duels, both with the ball and without the ball, it's paid off really nicely for the Whitecaps. And Vanni Sartini likes players who can win duels and can play in multiple positions. Fafa Pico does just that, but pretty much everyone was on their game against the San Jose Earthquakes. Yeah, it's the San Jose Earthquakes, worst team in MLS, but
still
a win.
3 points.
Yeah, still big 3 points, but give props to San Jose's goalkeeper Danielle for making some huge saves, including one off Fafa Pico early in the first half. If not for him, it probably would have been over by halftime.
It would have easily been over by halftime. You got to give a lot of credit to what he did because there was not a lot of help in front of him.
Yeah, and San Jose could barely get up the pitch.
Yeah.
And that was mostly.
I don't know what it is. San Jose sports teams in general, you kind of have to feel for them over the past year. I mean, Yeah, it's kind of like how what we used to talk about with Chicago.
Well, I
Sports
mean,
team.
Chicago is still,
Chicago's still there. Let's be honest, right?
yeah, but San Jose
Um,
is still with them.
yeah, I
I
got
mean, if
a
you're,
I got a buddy of mine. That's where he's from. He's up here, but he's from San Jose. And every time we talk sports, the first thing he does is this big intake of breath or roll of the eyes, and it's like doesn't matter what you're talking about. It's not good.
yeah, and just Earthquakes fans. If you're an Earthquakes fan listening, poor you. There's no rivalry between Vancouver and San Jose, so I guess we
No.
can sympathize. But if not for Danielle, I think the Earthquakes would have 0 points instead of 14 this season.
If last night, or sorry, if last weekend was any indication, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I haven't seen much Earthquake games, but it seems like Danielle is a bright spot in a really miserable season
I mean,
for
I've
San
seen a
Jose.
few of theirs. I've also seen, what other commentators talk about San Jose. This is not a new problem. I mean,
It's
San
been around for a
Jose
while.
it's been this way for a while. So you got to think it's a recruitment problem. It's a coaching problem. It's a front office that almost feels like they don't care problem. I mean, I don't know. You can chalk it up to a lot of stuff, but it's fixing the stuff off the pitch before you can even worry about the stuff on the
Yeah,
pitch.
there's a lot of problems down there in San Jose.
Which we've talked a number of clubs around the world,
Yeah,
like
and it's very similar to how the Whitecaps were before Axel Schuster arrived, but worse,
yeah,
I think,
you,
even
you need
worse.
someone to come in and willing to put in the legwork and the years to start changing things, start changing the people that are there, start changing the culture. Yeah, needs it. San Jose needs an overhaul and an exorcism.
Yeah, but back to the Whitecaps. Also, should mention the second goal. Pedro Vite starts this secondary assist. This is just beautiful football, champagne football, you like to call it. 1-2 between the former Dundee United guys, Ryan Gauld and Stuart Armstrong. And Stuart Armstrong off the bench, second game, gets his first goal of hopefully many as a Whitecap.
We were talking about getting Gauld and Armstrong on the pitch together because it didn't happen in the first game. Gauld was already off when Armstrong came on. So this was their first minutes together.
Yep.
It took just over 3 minutes for them to score.
Yeah, and hopefully this is the start of something special for the Whitecaps. And add Brian White to the mix.
Yes.
There's some fireworks there.
Absolutely.
Like we said, this could possibly be one of the best trios in MLS. But
I mean, trios. I mean, throw Fafa into that as well, right?
Yeah, you got a quartet. You got the Fab Four.
Yeah, exactly, right? Just give them a bunch of strings.
Yeah, and just a solid win at BC Place on Saturday over San Jose. Everyone was strong. You can't really complain about anything other than, it could have been more, but what can you do? Daniel was on his game. But after that, it was off to Houston, which they played last night. And this was a tale of two halves. First half was pretty poor. Somehow the Whitecaps only managed to be one down. Second half, Vanni Sartini made a bunch of tactical adjustments. Much better. Ended up getting a point in a place that is really tough to play.
The tactical adjustments were already coming in the middle of the first half.
Yep.
There wasn't the personnel switches yet, but you could already see Matias Laborda at that time was dropping back into a right back position. They're going with a back four going front. Vanni said it was more like a four. Well, it was like a 4-1-3-1 or a 4-1-2-3 sort of thing.
4-1-2.
It felt almost like a 4-4-2 at points, especially in defense, because Houston was breaking the high line, right? Like Whitecaps like to press. They love to press. They talk about loving to defend right from the attackers, right?
Right.
So you got your forwards, moving into the opposition center backs and full backs, trying to get them to make mistakes on the ball. You've got the midfielders, covering a little bit higher. You've got the defensive line moving up, and when you're only playing three at the back, and those wing back players are pushed so high up,
leaves all that
There's
space
space to
exposed.
exploit behind them. And I mean, Houston did it time and time again over the
Yeah.
half hour. The goal that was disallowed at the 10th minute was, part and parcel of this. It was a beautiful switch of play that got in behind. I think it would have been Laborda at that point.
Yeah, Laborda got.
Sorry, not Laborda. It would have been on that side. It would have been a Raposo. But then it was Laborda getting absolutely skinned inside the 18-yard box, right by the byline. Thankfully, it was offside because you got to say it was kind of a really nice individual play from Houston. If that would have counted, but yeah, it was quite a bit offside.
Yeah, and earlier I believe Griffin Dorsey made a nice cross to Ezekiel Ponce, but Ponce missed the header. But Dorsey just cooked Sam Adekugbe.
Dorsey had a good game.
I don't know what it is. I think he's good, but he turns into like prime Marcelo every time he plays the Whitecaps.
This year has been a good year for him. He had a breakout Leagues Cup last year, I believe, that even got his name starting to be talked about with the American national side. The one thing that hurts him is that he plays in America, and America is, like the one country that doesn't pick players that play in their own country. You got to play in Europe if you want to get picked by the States.
True.
Canada is up there too. We don't. It's not like we're picking CPL players.
Yeah, but at least Sam Adekugbe and Ali Ahmed, they get picked.
Hey, you can put Saliba Osorio on there as well.
Or Richie Larea, yeah.
Once we switched to that back four, things stabilized a little bit, but there was not anything going forward. I have to say, Pedro Vite is very he's a
lucky man.
Lucky man. Yes, it was a penalty.
Oh yeah, it was clearly.
I haven't heard anyone really fight against it. What ref originally called it, saying it was only a free kick outside pitch monitor. That is stone cold a penalty.
Yeah,
that was absolutely in the box. He is very, very lucky that was not a second yellow. It could have been easily.
I thought it was.
I thought it was too. When he called the penalty and he went over the penalty dot and he was talking with Ponce, who was going to take the shot, talked with Takioka, and I'm at that point I'm like, he hasn't talked to Vita yet. Usually if you're going to give a card, that's the first guy you talk to. So I think we're safe. It's understandable why Vanny made the switches at halftime. You have to take Pedro Vite off because you're knowing the referee went off at halftime, took another look at it, and is like, I probably could have. If Vite would have breathed in the general direction of another player, he would have gotten another yellow card, right? He was sitting on the finest of razor edges.
Yeah, I don't know how he didn't get a second yellow there, but clearly a penalty. And Ezekiel Ponce, Houston's new DP, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They paid quite a bit of money for him. And
Takaoka, this is only his first goal?
I think it's second or I think it's first or second. I don't remember what they said last night on the.
Takioka did well in the penalty. Like he guessed right. He got his hand on it, but
too much power.
Not with that much power, right? It's just tough.
You can't really blame him for that because that's just too powerful of a shot.
Yeah.
But good on him for diving the right way. But second half
was much different because not only did you have what was it? Ralph Priso came on and Schoep at that point.
Yeah,
I believe.
Unfortunately, Kubis had a quad problem, which kind of sucks. Yeah. He just came back from injury.
You know what? It's one of those ones where you're like, you have no idea how bad it is because they called it a right quad contusion, right? I was talking with my wife about this afterwards, and she's like, well, a contusion is basically just a bruise. So he said, yeah, it's basically a boo-boo on his leg.
Yeah, and
right? Like you don't know. You don't know how bad it is. They said they're going to reassess. It sounds like he's still traveling with the team. He's not going to go back to Vancouver. He's going to go to LA. So they are going to reassess and then see what they can do. And I mean, you're playing LA Galaxy. You really hope you have Kubas, but you want a healthy Kubas.
Yeah. Talk more about Galaxy later, but second half, compared to the Whitecaps first half, like Houston's midfield alone was bullying them. This time around, they were doing the bullying with their press. The counters looked more clean. And you can feel, oh, yes, the Whitecaps could tie the game up. They could tie the game up. And What do you know? They did. Ryan Gaul goes down the left flank, finds Fafa Pico, and off the bench is Brian White doing what Brian White does best.
Another headed goal.
Well, it's more of a flick on, but it's still a Brian White goal.
Yeah, but with his head, I mean, like, can you think of any guy who has more goals with his head?
I think Brian White and Fafa Pico have to be in the top 5.
Yeah, they have to be, absolutely. Brian White, that was his. How
13.
many is that on the season now?
13.
13.
13.
There you go. Yeah, not bad, not bad. You also saw the tactical understanding of the Whitecaps in the second half, because their formation would change depending on the flow of the game, right? Going forward, back 3 again. Going back, you saw the players dropping back into new roles very, very quickly. You saw the shift this time over to the right, as Atakube would be the one dropping off, because Laborda he ended up going off at some point as well. But there's one constant in that back line. Ranko Veselinovic, who had
monster
one game. Of the finest performances I've ever seen of him. And don't get me wrong, he's had some good performances, and he's had too many to count. He's consistent. He's a consistent guy. He understands his role. He's I don't know, he's got to be almost like number 2 or number 3 on the team sheet after Takioka and Gold, if they're healthy. He is the guy who takes that central position in a back 3. He understands the zonal system. He understands how to clear it off anyone. Makes sense he's there. He's also the tallest guy on the team, I think. But last night, and thank our friend here, Felipe Villeo, who put it down, 98% pass accuracy. 3 for 3 in long balls, 9 clearances. You got to remember, Veselinovic is one of the guys. He is, in past seasons, he's ranked number 1 in the league in clearances.
Last I checked, he was second behind Michael Boxall.
Yeah, right. So there you go. 2 blocks, 14 defensive actions, 75% duels won, 3 of 4. So I mean, guy didn't put in a foot all game, and you can take a look at it from that very first moment when he took the ball away. What was it, in like the 3rd or 4th minute?
Yeah, like 3rd or 4th minute, he just went in.
And it was funny because it's one of those where you have to watch it a few times, because he's coming from behind, and you think, oh no, the striker just tripped over his own feet. But the more and more you watch it, you're like, no, Ranko took that away from him.
Yeah, like that takes a lot of like precision and timing to clear the ball from behind, because if you make one mistake, you're getting booked.
It's a penalty, right? And one mistake, not only it's a penalty, it's a red card, because you're dealing with dog-so at that point.
Yeah, I mean clearance. I mean, the guy's the king of clearances, basically.
Yeah,
9 by 9 is just wild.
Again, Fafa Pico had a phenomenal game. Veselinovic, we don't talk about defenders much, because again, you do your job, it's unnoticeable. You mess up, it's glaring. Ranko Veselinovic was the man of the match last night.
Yeah, I think for both teams, considering how he pretty much was everywhere, especially at the end where the Whitecaps were. I know some people don't like it, but I understand, given the conditions there in Houston. They were pretty much playing for the point. Ranko was there to just get it out.
Especially for the last 10 minutes, even, you could say. Yeah, they were definitely playing for the point. You got to remember, it was 31 degrees there. That's what Emilus was saying. The Whitecaps actually took a picture earlier in the day of the temperature gauge at the stadium, and it said 41 degrees at that point.
Yeah, I can't imagine just running around trying to play football in that heat.
There's no water breaks. There's no nothing, right? I mean, it's something to get used to, especially when you're thinking they just came from Vancouver, where the weather was 13, 14.
Yeah, and but props to the entire team, for Vanny, for making the adjustments, for the team to actually adapting, because I mean, you got players that can play multiple positions. They can adapt easily, and a point down in Houston is huge at this point, given the playoff implications. Take all the points you can get, because every point matters.
After the match, Vanny was talking about playing in Houston. He said that, in his opinion, that the Dynamo are up with the Galaxy in terms of the teams that play the best in the Western Conference. So he had a lot of very, very positive things to say about his opponent. A lot of positive things to say about the character of his team as well.
Yeah, and I mean Houston, Ben Olsen has really implemented that possession-based, in-your-face type football, and we showed how much you can actually really bully a team in that first half. But if you can adapt against it and keep pressing, make the adjustments, you can go toe-to-toe with them. That's what the Whitecaps did.
We should talk about some records as well.
Yeah.
25 points on the road. Whitecaps have now broken a club MLS era record for the most points ever in a season on the road. Ryan Gauld, with his assist, that he had the secondary assist on White's goal, he now has the most assists in a season for a Whitecaps player in MLS era as well.
I believe Pedro Morales had that record.
Yeah, before. And the number of assists is escaping me, but it's
pretty high.
It's up there. So, yeah. And then there's some other ones with ties. Whitecap, they're in MLS. They've only lost one game out of the last 10.
And that was against Houston.
Against Houston, right? Yeah, in that weird game. Before this match, if you took a look at the game earlier this season and the two games last year, 20 goals had been scored in those three games. 20.
Yeah, 20. Remember we had that crazy 6-2 game, 6-2, whatever it was, last year at BC Place?
Yeah. So, I mean, to a 1-1 draw, it feels like, there wasn't a lot there, but this was an entertaining match.
Yeah, if you didn't watch this game, it was actually pretty entertaining. And games between Vancouver and Houston are always
they're fun.
They always have fireworks. And Houston, by the way, could potentially be a playoff opponent, depending on how the rest of the season plays out. So you never know.
They could right now. Again, Vancouver sitting in 6th, Houston's in 7th, only 1 point behind. But when you look at that table, I mean, Vancouver in 6th, they're 4 points behind second RSL, behind RSL. And you take a look at who the Whitecaps have left to play. They could either massively move up based on the teams that they're playing against, because all the teams in front of them, they're playing teams that are higher up in the table, or this could be very humbling.
Yeah, and also, again, big shout out to the San Jose Earthquakes for scoring in the 89th minute against Seattle last night. So that also helps things.
That does help. Interesting. We were talking about games last night. The one where you can say, like, I don't know if it helped or hindered, Portland over the Galaxy 4-2.
Which is crazy, and also kind of doesn't help because you're going to have an extra motivated LA Galaxy side on Saturday.
Well, you have an extra motivated Galaxy side. Galaxy, you're not going to catch, so it's not like you're fighting for that first spot. But it moves Portland into that conversation of wanting to get, into out of the play-in spots, right?
Right. And as you can see, Portland are in the 8th, just 2 points behind Houston. So yeah, this table is extra tight. And I asked Fafa Pico about this last night. He said, we're pretty much going to take all the points we can get and work hard to get it because it's crunch time.
It's that sports thing that's always said where, you take it with a grain of salt because you hear people talk about it, and it just sounds like a cliche. It's like, every game's a playoff game. This kind of feels like it.
Pretty much every game. No, to me, every game is a
swing. The swing if you lose or if you win, and the number of positions on the table. I mean, it's like you're watching a Texas Hold'em match.
Yeah, it feels like we're watching, that scene in Anchorman where you have all the news people almost fighting it out to a duel. That's what the Western Conference is like.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah, and it's escalating very quickly. And
yes.
Props.
But we talked about it already. We have LA Galaxy coming up next. I mean, what can you say about the Galaxy? Galaxy have been phenomenal. They've already clinched a playoff spot in the
Yep.
West. I believe they're the only team in the West that has clinched, where on the East, it's a much different story. Three
Much
teams in
different.
the East have already clinched. Inter Miami, Cincinnati,
Cincinnati,
Columbus.
Columbus,
Side note,
big boys.
Miami's draw last night means that they cannot in any way, they are unable to mathematically beat the all-time MLS points total in a season.
Yeah, that was by New England. I think 7. Forgot what it was, but
Yeah.
it was by New
Anyone
England.
want to take a look at where New England is this year?
Yeah, but the Galaxy, as we mentioned, 4-2 loss
Yeah.
away to the Portland Timbers. Evander with a hat trick last night, but Peck and Paintsill, two of the Galaxy big boys, with the goals. So, Galaxy have been a team that, this is the Galaxy you and I remember.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Like this is the
contenders.
Galaxy that was flying, like the Beckham era, right?
Right, but you got Pooch, Peck, and Paintsill, and then you add Marco Royce to that. And you get a contender. And of course, you can't forget the likes of Maya Yoshida in the back. Like, the Galaxy don't have like the sexiest names like as they did 10 years ago, but they're a damn good team.
They're a great
Royce is
team.
a really big name.
The one thing with the Galaxy is, I mean, they're kind of all attack. They are defensively leaky.
Yeah, they're all
right.
I guess that was the problem last night.
Yeah, they're like
I didn't watch the game, by the way.
The Whitecaps have 8 fewer goals scored against them than the Galaxy.
Yeah,
the Galaxy is just taking the mantra of like NHL teams from the 80s of, just score more than the other guy.
Let's go score.
Don't worry about who's in net. Just throw in a pylon. But there are ways to exploit the Galaxy, but you have to be patient. You have to be patient, but you can't sit back. If you sit back against the Galaxy, they'll eat you alive. Right?
We saw that last April when they were here and ended up beating the Whitecaps like 3-1.
Well, Vanny was talking about it even for stretches of El Clasico, right? Or El Clasico, the El Tráfico,
yeah,
right? They call it. Where you can't just sit back, right, and try to counterattack because they just won't let you. You have to. Do you know what it reminds me? It reminds me of last year when Vanny completely switched the formation, put Golden as the wing back against LAFC, went there and they won like what 4-1, 4-2. You need to surprise them. You need to surprise them.
Yeah.
You need to give them something that they haven't prepared for, something that maybe your team hasn't prepared for. But you need to throw in a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, and Galaxy, like, you can't take your foot off the gas either because that's what happened when they were here in April. And that's what happened to LAFC. Like, LAFC were up 2-0 at like halftime.
I know,
and then boom, Galaxy just score 4. 2 by Dejan Joveljic, who's also a player that
games are 90
Whitecaps
minutes,
should
right?
be where, right?
Games are 90
but
minutes.
Galaxy have also, just looking at their last 5 MLS matches, won 3, lost 2, and the other loss was they lost to St. Louis on the 1st of September.
Okay.
So this is a team that they're good, but the Whitecaps can go toe to toe with anyone as they've shown, and just once again stick to the game plan. Don't fall asleep. Don't let the foot off the gas. It'll be tough because it's LA Galaxy, also a tough place to play. What's the stadium called there? I forgot. Down in
LA Galaxy.
It's not StubHub Center anymore.
No, it's not.
That's how I use it.
Yeah, I can't. I was about to say they're the BMO field, but that's LAFC.
That's LAFC. Whatever it's called.
Yeah.
StubHub Center. It's a tough place to play. The Dignity Health Sports Park. There it is.
There it is. Thank you.
And if you can, try to get the 3 points, but a draw would still be huge. But take all the points you can get because playoff races are just going to get tighter and tighter. And that's not all on the Whitecaps schedule over the next few days.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a game of equal importance, the Canadian Championship final against Toronto FC, which will take place on Wednesday at BC Place. You and I will be there.
Yep.
And you have a chance to qualify for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. You have a chance to win the Voyagers Cup 3 years in a row. I mean, you get to win a trophy. It's still a big game. It's not tin pot whatsoever, and it's against Toronto. Like, what more could you ask for?
Absolutely. But don't look at Toronto as the team that the Whitecaps played earlier in the season in MLS, where the Whitecaps
they've improved
won
since then.
4-0. It's a different team. Toronto's, I mean, you really have to fumble over your own feet to not get into a playoff spot in MLS, but they are in a playoff spot. I think they're in one of the play-in spots.
They're in the 8th.
Yeah, so play-in spot.
They lost to Columbus last night.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's Columbus.
Yeah, true.
You know, not an easy team. You're talking about
they're playing Colorado on Saturday.
Yeah. So it's a very, very tough match coming up. Not only LA Galaxy, but Toronto as well.
Yeah, this is
Toronto with something very significant on the line, as you said.
Yeah, Toronto, they've improved, but they still got a ways to go to become a contender. But there are gradual signs of improvement from Toronto FC, and it's also worth mentioning that $1 from every ticket to the Canadian Championship final will go to BC Soccer. So good on the Whitecaps for thinking of local soccer clubs and grassroots footy here in BC. And if you want to come out to the final, you trade any piece of Toronto's merchandise at the Whitecaps official store in Gastown. Tomorrow and Saturday, get a free ticket to the game.
Not bad.
Pretty good deal, and 50% off all drinks. So if you want a beer until kickoff, and first 10,000 fans get a special commemorative T-shirt, and hopefully a three-peat for the Whitecaps.
Absolutely, it would be only the second team to do it after Toronto did. 10, 15 years ago?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is next two games are going to be huge. Like every game is huge for the Whitecaps, and take all the points that you can get. So that's the Whitecaps, and just looking, what are some big news around MLS? And it's rumored that looks like Greg Berhalter, former U.S. men's national team head coach, he looks like he might be the next head coach of the Chicago Fire.
Yeah, this is,
and this source is Guillermo Rivera of The Athletic.
Yes, but also been confirmed again with Tom Bogert.
Yeah, so pretty reliable sources here.
Yeah, I got to say it's not something that I thought, but it's a big position. It's one that I guess has been talked with the Fire and Berhalter's camps for the last number of weeks. Basically, it's a coaching job, but it would elevate him a little bit in the hierarchy, where he would be able to have like a technical director as well, but that position would be below him, so he would have a little bit more control in terms of player personnel, right? Someone like that would definitely have his hand in signings and things like that. I mean, I don't know. It's not like the Fire could do worse.
When's the last? They've literally have been a pun intended dumpster fire like for the last few years. When's the last time they made the playoffs? I can't remember.
I don't know. They're second last in the East right now. Only New England is below them. And again, just because a manager can't make it work in an international football doesn't mean they can't do the same in domestic and vice versa. It's going to be very different. I mean, you're going from something where you're playing 2 games in a window, and then you get to wait a few months.
Yep.
Now you're playing MLS, and MLS you're playing not only every week, but in a lot of months, every 3 days. I mean, it's going to be a very, very different beast for him, something that he has done before, but not for a long time. I mean, he had 2 stints with the Americans. So,
coach before,
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and
it's not done yet, but it does
look like it's moving along.
Yeah. Basically, they're comparing the role in Chicago to what Peter Vermees would have with SKC. Yeah, so it would be a similar sort of role.
I mean, if the Chicago Fire want to be good, it's gonna take a while because, not just on the pitch, off the pitch too. Like Soldier Field is just not a good
Soldier
stadium.
Field, like you look at it and you're watching games there, and it's. I hate to say it, it's hard to watch that field.
Yeah, it's worse than BC Place. Like say what you want about BC Place, but it's a million times worse.
Yeah.
So let's see where this goes with the Chicago Fire. And moving back to Canada, the women's national team will play the defending World Cup champion Spain in a friendly on the 25th of October, which will be a good test for them.
And I'm trying to remember exactly where this game is going to be held.
It's forgot where, but let me just take in Almendralejo.
There you go. So good for them. Again, it's only 1 game in that window. I'll have to wait and see. Again, I mean, the men only have 1 game in that window as well. I know that they're trying to get multiple, like 2. But it's going to be tough again for both those programs. You're dealing with not a lot of time, and you're also dealing with, especially with Europe, on the men's side, qualifiers for different competitions happening at that point. So there's certain nations you want to play that just simply can't.
Yeah, and again, great test for the women. Play against some of the best players in the world, including Alexei Pertez and many others. So we'll see how they do on the 25th against the women of Spain.
All right. Before we move on across the pond, let's talk CPL a little bit.
Yep. So Pacifica figured out how to score goals. That's 6 goals in 2 games. I don't know where this was all season, but over the weekend they ended up beating Vancouver FC at Starlight Stadium 3-0, and Vancouver FC have been really sliding. And they continue to slide. Vancouver only had 1 shot on target in that game. And, Pacific had, almost 10? Or something like that. And just, I don't know. Where was this from Pacific all season? Dario Zanata with 2. And the guy who's they signed from Vancouver, Moses Dyer, scores against them, so that's got to hurt for Vancouver.
This moves them above Vancouver FC in the table. Both those teams are out of the playoffs right now. They're sitting 5th and 6th, but I mean, there's still games left in the season. They're only in the match week 23. So
yeah, and also Pacific, they managed to draw Halifax Wanderers yesterday in Halifax, so they can't score.
Yeah.
I don't know, when I do watch them, they can't score. When I don't, maybe they do. I don't know, maybe it's me.
You.
It's me. Maybe I put a curse on them.
Yeah, there you go.
So, I mean, the CPL table, just looking at it right now, it's still tight, and we've got a few weeks left to go in the season, and just bringing it up here. I believe Forge are still on top. Yeah, they are by 3 points. So Pacific has taken that 5th and final spot from Vancouver, but only separated by 1 point.
Yep.
And it's Vancouver, they had a good start to the season. I thought, okay, maybe things will be better. This is a second-year team. Like last year, the expansion team. Excuse.
Since the beginning of, not even the beginning of summer, maybe a little bit later than that, they've had trouble.
I had trouble scoring, trouble defending.
I don't know if you can really put your finger on what the catalyst of that is, but yeah.
I think it's a mixture of things.
Yeah. Before we move on from the CPL, we should mention Josh Healy, who writes for the Wanderers Notebook, had a nice Q&A with CPL Commissioner Mark Noonan just before that Pacific match with Wanderers. We talked about a wide range of things. Two things really stood. Three things really stood out for me.
Yeah.
One, salary cap's going up next year. No idea to what. Obviously, they'll release that when they feel it's appropriate, but salary cap is going up. Good news. The other thing interesting is one of the big things that fans have been talking about is they want
expansion.
Well, before we get to expansion, is they want all teams to play at the same time on the final day.
Right? Like MLS with decision day.
Like
other leagues.
Like any league, right? It doesn't happen right now. Again, it's a scheduling thing. They talked about that. It might not be a thing for this year. Again, you're dealing with individual sports facilities trying to make it happen. You're dealing not only with that, but you're dealing with television and all that stuff. Because if you're going to do this, you got to make sure it can be shown. But he did kind of put out a watch this space sort of message. If not this year, maybe next year. But yes, getting to what your point was, the big one is expansion. Talked about the fact is the goal of the CPL is to double the size of the league in the next 8 to 10 years. Now,
right now they have
8 teams. So you think about that, 8 to 10 years, they wanted one team per year.
Yeah, so if one has 16,
huge,
8 to 10
right?
years.
And
ambitious.
If they get to 16, I think that is phenomenal. At that point, you've got the same number of teams as kind of what like the low countries, used to have before, there was some shuffling. I think that would be good for Canada. I think it would make it feel more like a league instead of like a team, giant geographical space, team. What's interesting is
more coast to coast.
Exactly. What's interesting is a couple of the names that have been thrown around. Obviously, Kelowna. Kelowna's been thrown around. They had the game, the on-tour game between Cavalry and Vancouver that happened there earlier in the year. Noonan said they are actually actively working with the mayor of Kelowna, their council, the city staff to see whether or not they can figure out a facility, because that's the big sticking point.
That's the big hurdle.
Look what happened with Saskatoon, right? They had everything in line, couldn't get a stadium. Fell apart, right? He talked about one of the reasons why they love Kelowna is because geographically it connects the other two BC teams with Cavalry, right? Like it just makes that kind of that line a little bit closer. The other place that they were looking at, and I thought it was interesting, or got a little bit of a mention, was St. John's, Newfoundland. Halifax Wanderers actually did what they call the International Summer Series there earlier this year. They had almost 5,000 people come out. You got to think, if you can get that many people coming out and you never will. I mean, right now it's the novelty. But if you got half that coming out for an expansion side over there, it's not like there's another professional team other than, say like major junior hockey or whatnot.
Which doesn't really count. It's not.
That would be pretty cool to have a team in St. John's. That'd be pretty cool. You'd have two teams in Atlantic provinces. That's not something I ever thought I'd hear a professional sports league in any sport say.
Yeah, that would be really cool. But also have the legit coast to coast. You got Pacific and then you got St. John. Exactly,
right? I was, I'm spitballing in my head. Like if you go up to 16 teams, so we just named 2. Who are the other 6, right? Like where would you think other 6? I mean, you've got to hope beyond hope. Quebec City is in that.
Yeah. At least one team in Quebec.
Quebec City, I would love to see them figure out FC Edmonton again. Granted, they need a new stadium. Clark Stadium, Foot Stadium are basically crumbling relics.
Falling apart.
Yeah, you need something else there. You might probably even need a new ownership group because the
The last ones,
well,
yeah,
the last ones they held it together. I mean, they're holding it together in the old
they tried.
NASL. Like, they tried, but it's just something else. You need, yeah, you need something else there because I feel like the support is there. The problem is people in the summer, like Edmonton empties, people go on vacations, people, I mean, it's a tough place to put soccer, but I think if you are tenacious enough, you can make it work. I'd love to see a Saskatoon work out. I'd love to see it work out. Having another professional sports team in Saskatchewan
Yeah, but
would be
again, they
great.
need a stadium.
Yeah, they need a stadium. Whether it's there, whether it's Regina, I would love Saskatoon because it's, you got that northern. It's more northern than Regina. Than all these teams just kind of following the border. But I think it would be a great place. So that's three. But what do you do with the
Yeah,
other three? I don't know. The only other one that
no, no,
came to
no.
mind, and the only one that came to mind for me was going way, way back when the Women's World Cup was happening in Canada, was the temporary stadium and the venue they had in Moncton, in
Right,
New
right,
Brunswick, right? I thought I
right.
thought it was a great place. Like I thought it was a really good turnout. It was a good place. I don't know if people would have their dream of three teams in Atlantic provinces. That seems to warp reality at some point. But it's the only other name that really kind of came to mind. I mean, you could absolutely throw, I don't know, a third team, the whole lower Ontario mix as well, to go with Forge and York, but I don't know if you'd want to.
Like a team in Windsor or something.
Well, Windsor had been talked about for a while. Windsor
Yeah,
actually, I
yeah,
think,
they
was
have.
pre-approved for expansion. So, I mean, it's you know what? You're right. It's not as strange as I initially just said.
Yep. So you never. It's ambitious to go double the league in the next 8 to 10
It's hugely
years,
ambitious.
but
It's
we'll
also
see
hugely ambitious when you remember the
where
whole
this
fiasco
goes. And
between Media Pro and whatnot, where they were saying, like, you promised so much expansion by a certain date, you didn't deliver, and the other said we couldn't deliver because you weren't showing like the games and all that, or getting media licenses. So
all the games.
I'm happy that they're still bullish on this, but you got to start doing something because you added and contracted, right? So
Right.
if you want to truly add, it's going to take a lot of work. I would say in the next 5 years, if you can get to 10, would be good. That's two teams in 5 years. That's I
10.
would say
I think
that,
10 should be. I think
right?
that's
Like
more realistic.
right now. Who knows? Maybe you get a swell
Right.
of interest that comes up. I mean, they are slowly growing club attendances. So who knows? Maybe
Yeah, I mean, if you build it, they'll
maybe it's
come.
right to be bullish. I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Hope so.
move
So
around.
let's move over to Europe.
I'll let you take it.
Yep. So Chelsea with a 1-0 win over Bournemouth. I mean, that was a pretty bad first half from them. Not gonna lie. No one could string more than 3 passes together. The breakouts were just terrible. Defending was all over the place. And Bournemouth had the better chances. They were the better team. They could have been up at least 1 or 2-0. It looked like Chelsea just got up from the hotel, pretty much. And then Robert Sanchez, he plays his best game in a Chelsea shirt by far, makes 7 saves, including the Evan Nielsen penalty save late in the first half. And it wasn't really a good penalty anyway. It was just low and not very much power, but still a good save. Second half, things change, especially since Jadon Sancho comes on for Pedro Neto. And he has a debut to remember. Just all over the place in a good way. Attack was flowing through him. Passes were accurate. He was crossing. He was taking on defenders. And it pays off because he assists Christopher Nkunku's winning goal, which happened in the 86th minute. And let's not forget, given Nkunku's technical ability, his ability to run in the box and take on defenders. Pretty underrated part of his game. And he's done that many times with Leipzig. Just took on 3 Bournemouth defenders and slotted it home, and the balloon came out. This guy needs to start the next game. I know I said he's not that great up top, but if you give him service, if you just keep giving the ball to him, he'll cook in the box. He can't just stand there and try to drop back. He needs to have the service. Sure, he has the ability to drop back and take it himself, but he's better as a 9 if the service comes to him. So it was a pretty muddy game all around, but if not for Nkunku, Sancho, Robert Sanchez, Levi Colwell to some extent, and Moises Caicedo, who was pretty much running everywhere, which is more impressive considering he just came back from international duty. I mean, a win is a win no matter how scrappy it was. And then there's this guy, Anthony Taylor. The baldy, 14 yellow cards, ref. Which is a Premier League record. You know that scene in Breaking Bad where Walt tells Jesse, this whole thing, all of it is all about me? That was Anthony Taylor. Like, he was giving out yellow cards to anyone just because they took a breath.
Candy at Halloween.
Yeah. Like, Oprah, you get a yellow. Everyone gets a yellow. And yeah, I even got a yellow card for yelling at my TV. So
didn't Maresca get one too?
Yeah, he did I don't even know what he did. And he didn't really complain too much, I guess, but he looked just as confused as everyone else.
It's the scowl. It's just having the scowl was enough.
Maybe that was it. Some of them were deserved, though, like Robert Sanchez giving away the penalty. He didn't even get the ball. And Renato Vega for jumping into the crowd after Christopher Nkunku's goal. That's a clear yellow.
That's just stupid, yeah.
But there was just some that were just weird. Colwell clearly wins the ball back, but he gets a yellow. And then Sancho says something, he gets a yellow. What did Sancho say? I don't know. It didn't look malicious. He just opened his mouth, spoke 3 words, got a yellow. So this guy, I don't know how he was still allowed to ref Chelsea matches given his history. And he's not refereeing a Premier League game this weekend, which is rightfully the best call. But I don't know, like this guy just gave out yellows for fun. And I was surprised nobody got sent off. 14 yellows, like 9 for Chelsea, 5 for Bournemouth. But the game itself, I mean, it's only one game, only one half, but Jadon Sancho looked like he could be the guy. And I'd like to see him start against West Ham, if possible. And same with Christopher Nkunku. Maybe you move Neto back to the right, because that's where he's more comfortable. That's his natural position. Nani Madueke looked fine, but not as good as he was in the past weeks. And Nicholas Jackson, I guess he needs a break, because too many poor passes, poor decisions against Bournemouth. And Nkunku should have came on earlier, but at least he came on. So despite Anthony Taylor and everything, 1-0 win, big 3 points. Up next is a London derby. West Ham away at the Olympic Stadium, or London Stadium as they now call it now. Then you got Barrow and the EFL Cup on Tuesday. Should pick up some points. Should, I guess, in the West Ham game. Should get the win. Should. Barrow should get the win. Again, should. Not a bad start to the Chelsea season. Much better compared to last year. But still growing pains, but at least things are progressing. So unfortunately for Tottenham, there was a North London derby, and despite Arsenal missing all those key players, gonna win.
Yeah. Again, there are moments where you can see what is working. This was a tough game to watch. It was just disjointed and like on both sides. For it didn't feel like a North London derby. It was kind of funny because even the commentators were talking at one point saying at the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, there has never been a 0-0 match
between these two teams
at all, ever.
Really?
There's never
That's
been
crazy.
a 0-0 match yet at the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And they were saying, like, the way this is going, it kind of feels like we're jinxing it. It kind of feels like this is going to be the one.
Well, they did.
Yeah, Arsenal goes up ahead. Set piece goal, obviously. That's been a bit of a problem. Like, what was it last year? I think Arsenal lost or won 2-0 against Spurs again, both set piece goals. That's an issue. It's an issue defending set pieces. There is work to be done. I remember a couple of years ago when Tottenham hired that one set piece master, the guy who apparently had a playbook for like 3,000 different ways to take a corner. He ended up going back to Italy, I believe, but when they had him, they were noticeably better on set pieces, not just only in defending, but in attacking and creating goals and chances at that time. Wish they would have kept them, or I wish they would have kept the playbook and the code breaking to use it. But loss puts them only one win in 4 so far in the Premier League, and their schedule is not easy coming up. Again, they've got Brentford coming up. That should be a game where they're winning, but there's no guarantee. They get to switch things a little bit to play, of all teams, Qarabag
Europa League.
FK in Europa League. So that'll be an interesting one. Qarabag is...
You're in the Champions League not too long ago.
I want to say Uzbekistan?
Somewhere there. Qarabag. Like, now that I mention it.
Azerbaijan. Yeah. Again, definitely a team that you see a lot in Champions League as that representative. But I think that's more based on coefficient spots. Azerbaijan, I don't think, has a team that automatically gets into the Champions League group stages. They have to do the playoffs. And then if you lose playoffs, obviously you drop down. So they've dropped down. Other than that, they were playing Leagues Cup. Third round, they had drawn Coventry City. And again...
Nearly pulled off a classic Tottenham. Left it late.
They scored in the 88th minute and the 92nd minute to win 2-1 over Coventry City. Again,
wasn't a good performance from what I heard.
Subs made the day. Jed Spence, who came on for a really, really good cameo, and Brendan Johnson. Brendan Johnson, I think we have to talk about him for a moment because significant minority of the Tottenham fan base has been absolutely abusive to this player.
Oh, I hate the player for on the pitch, but just don't.
The thing is he doesn't deserve it as well. I mean, you take a look at the number of goal contributions that he had last year. I believe it was 15, which in your first season with a brand new team, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. We would be happy with that if someone had 15 goal contributions for the Whitecaps. The abuse is so bad, he actually got rid of his Instagram account because people were targeting him on social media. At the end of the match, I believe it was Son Heung-min who actually was helping and pushing Johnson to go and clap towards the away part of the stadium where Tottenham fans were, because he doesn't even want to be a part of that anymore, right? Even when he does something like what he did there, like his first belief is that he's still going to get more abuse. I think it's really, really disgusting that you've got a significant portion of the fan base acting this way towards Johnson. And let's be honest, it is a minority, but it is a very, very vocal minority. I think you got to get behind a player like this. You got to get behind a young player like this because he is a player that will improve. And the thing is, it's not like he's had some stinkers. Everyone has, but he will learn. He will get better. And you better get behind him because unfortunately one of the new signings, Odeberg, got injured. And the talk is that it sounds like it's a pretty significant one.
Oof.
So
players like
Johnson are going to be playing. Give him your belief. The other thing we should mention is I believe this is the first time, or this is Tottenham's first win in Leagues Cup since 2021. So
Crazy.
yeah, like Leagues Cup is something we prioritize all competitions. Well, they hadn't. So again, they got the win. Not really deserved, but take it, walk away, don't make too much noise. Odegaard's injury sucks because I think he has had a bright start. I think he has been a real problem for opposing teams on the left-hand side. Tottenham needs to figure something out. They haven't had the greatest start. The play has looked good, but it's not there yet. There's something not clicking. So I'm hoping that it's just a matter of time to getting it right, because it has been positive to watch, which is a weird thing to say when you look at the record.
Not getting the results.
You look on paper, and what it is, it's problems that have happened before. It's finishing. They need someone to finish. They need someone to put the ball in the net. They're getting that happening from players that you expect to get a goal every now and then. They need strikers to finish.
Yeah, Solanke is still getting settled in.
I'm at the point where, you know what? I want to see what Mikey Moore can do. Yeah, he just turned 17 like a month ago. But give the boy some minutes. I want to see what Lancashire can do. I want to see what these academy players that grew up in Tottenham that you said are good enough to be with the first team, and they're training with the first team and they're sitting on the bench. Okay, fine. If they're that good and the players that are out there aren't doing exactly what you want, throw them in. Get Timo Werner out. I'm sorry. He hasn't done what he did.
Has he even played?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he has. He's been on the pitch. Let's put it that way.
Okay, been on the pitch.
Like he's taken space.
Taking space on the bench too.
But at this point, you know what? Put in one of the kids. It can't be much worse. So
I mean, Mikey Moore's a wonder kid. So
oh my gosh,
see what
the number of teams that want him. You know what? He is yours. He is homegrown. There's something to that, right? Put him on.
Yeah.
Brentford coming up this weekend. It is an opportunity. Take advantage of it, because you've got a fan base that, while you've got even the people that have the belief in Ange, that like the style of play, but the results just haven't happened. They're getting restless.
Yeah.
And you need to start appeasing them, and then working on getting, the naysayers and the abusive, call them fans, if you will. I don't
the
see
armchairs.
Those aren't fans to me.
Yeah.
But you need to start getting everyone pushing in the same direction. It's not quite there yet.
Yep. So I guess you have to trust the process. But in other news, Everton, Jay-Z has been rumored to be a part of a bid for an kind of ownership for him. So 99 problems, football ain't one.
Well, it could be. This could be 100 problems.
Yeah. Given how Everton blew 2-0 leads in 2 straight games.
Yeah, I know, right?
So
we've kind of seen this before. We had that 777 group that tried to do an Everton bid. That ended up folding and, turning out into a whole bunch of nothing. Everton's weird. It's weird that you're trying to actively sell a club while you're in the middle of finalizing the building of a brand new stadium. Everton's just at a really weird situation, weirder than other years. But I mean,
it just gets weirder.
Yeah, it's tough to be an Everton fan, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if Jay-Z, again, I don't think he can solve their problems, because they have a lot of problems. 99 problems, more than 99 problems.
He just wants to have a cage match with LeBron James for a new Merseyside derby.
Yeah, I guess that would be it. So, speaking of problems,
Yeah.
Rodri says players are ready to strike since there are way too many matches.
Yeah, he was talking basically saying that when leagues and FIFA and continental confederations start adding games, nobody talks to the players. To give you an idea of Rodri played 63 competitive games for club and country last season, featured over
Yeah,
6,100 minutes between July 2023 and 2024, once you include preseason friendlies to that. The There was a recent report that said player welfare redline hits a maximum between 50 and 60 matches per season. Now, he's playing for Spain, he's playing for Manchester City. He is the extreme example because Manchester City is not only playing European football and a couple of domestic trophies, they're also doing Club World Cup, which just got expanded as well. He's playing for
that's some.
Spain, which, when it comes to international competitions, always is going to make the latter stages of whatever competition they're in. But these are the guys you kind of have to take care of, right? Like, yes, there
Right?
are some teams that are only going to play 40 odd games a year. That's the way it is, right? They're only going to be playing within their country in terms of league and domestic trophies. You have to look at the players that are going above and beyond because their bodies are just going to crumble,
Yeah, like a
and
player can only take so
you have to
much.
take care of player safety. I do think it could get to a point where you could see that happening. Um, Now you've got other people that saying I don't think players are interested in that, like Russell Martin, who manages Southampton. And it's like, well, of course you don't say that. You just
Because
got back into the Premier League. You're not the people that your players are not the players that we're talking about.
yeah, we're
So
talking about the big teams.
exactly right. You have to take these in mind because you're going to start seeing fewer of the players that you want to see because they're going to be out with injury. Or you're going to see the teams at the very top having squads like Chelsea, and they're going to start pushing for saying, I need to have all these guys registered because of the number of games they're playing.
Yeah, I guess bowling and balling were thinking ahead, but in
Yeah,
all seriousness, yeah, there are way too many games.
there
And we
are.
seen it. We seen it in MLS. We see it overseas.
Yeah, I I think I don't understand sometimes the expansion of these competitions. Like, and I know FIFA has
Competitions.
come up saying it's not our fault. We only account for like 1% of the games that these teams are playing. Like, but you're the ones that are adding games to an already congested schedule, right?
They're the ones
You
approving this.
expanded your continental competitions. You expanded the World Cup. You expanded the Club World Cup.
Expanded the
Why?
Champions League.
Right? Yeah, UEFA in the Champions League, Europa
Europa League.
Conference, and
Yeah,
Europa
in
League in
Europa.
terms of going to the league system. I get it. It's a nice thing, but you've added two more games to the league phase than what had been traditionally in the group stage.
Yeah, players are playing every 3 days now,
Yeah.
and not much recovery time means more injuries, which is a big reason why we're seeing a lot of them. Too many
It's
games.
going to be interesting to see how this works because the way contracts work in England or in just Europe in general,
Yeah,
you've got the questions of whether a strike would even be legal or if this is basically just grounds where clubs would be allowed to terminate contracts. It's going to be a weird system because usually if you're under a contract system, the right to strike doesn't exist.
yeah, you have to
So
honor the contract.
yeah, I don't know. Like there's a lot up in the air, but I think if nothing changes, it will reach a head of some point. I just
Right.
don't know what that's going to look like right now.
I
But
think we're
when
just
you
in the
have
beginning.
players talking about this in the open, I think it starts becoming a viable option.
Yeah. Speaking of Man City, their hearing for the 115 charges it's begun
Started on
this week.
Monday.
Yeah, and it's interesting that their kitman, who's been with them for 15 years, leaves
Oh, I
during this
I
time.
didn't see that.
I
Yeah.
saw that on Insta.
Yeah. The one thing I did see is they're talking about how the way the hearing on this is going to function, it's going to function kind of like a criminal proceedings, even though it's not. It's more like a tribunal, but it's going to be two-part in where you have the hearing, and then depending on the outcome of hearing, you'll have sentencing that will be a separate function. So it's kind of interesting that it functions that way. Definitely more like criminal proceedings. But yeah, they're very, very quick to say these are not criminal proceedings, right?
Right. And we'll see where this goes. Probably going to go nowhere, but see if there's any.
If it goes nowhere, you're going to basically have to take out English FPP rules and throw it out the window.
Yeah, because it doesn't really exist.
The league, the English FA, they are banking everything on this.
Yeah.
They need this to work. And this is why they took as long as they did in order to get everything lined up, right? Like they didn't do what Europe did, where they kind of the whole European thing against Manchester City. They screwed it. They screwed it.
Yeah.
Right. They did it too fast. They didn't do their homework. They made a case that was full of holes and easy to pick apart. And eventually, when it went to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, it was. The FA and everything in England, they need this to work. Because if it doesn't, all the different safeguards that they have put in place are meaningless. They're meaningless. And they're basically back to square one. At that point, you're basically going to have an English FA that says, doesn't matter what we do, they're going to get away with it anyway. So free reign, spend what you want.
Yeah, like, oh, we got FP rules, but we're not going to enforce them. So
at that point, it's going to be just the Wild West.
Yeah, and teams will just do whatever they want. We're going to do it anyway.
You're going to see Manchester City just open the floodgates. You're going to see teams like Newcastle, arguably, with the backing they have, the richest club in the world right now, by a long shot, go, all right, we want to win stuff. And they're going to basically just throw, back up Brinks trucks to players to come to the Northeast England, because they're going to have to, because they're in Northeast England. It's going to be a weird situation. It's not going to be settled right away. I don't think you're going to have a ruling until
not for a while.
January, February.
Yeah, that's what I was
thinking. It's going to be before the season's done, but it's going to be, and then what that ruling is going to look like and this is a big if they are found guilty on however many of these charges, what that means, what a potential punishment could be, and what the appeal process is going to be, because it's going to be appealed. It's going to be. This is not near being finished. It's not even close. So sit down, grab some popcorn, and wait.
And let's wait. So, we have the first managerial change of the season. So AS Roma have sacked De Rossi after only 4 matches, and they've only picked up 3 points.
Yeah. In
those 4 matches, 3 draws and 1 loss.
Again, why did you get rid of Mourinho?
Yeah. And
I mean, I get it, but even Mourinho just said, like, when these things happen and you see a managerial change, you might get that short-term bump.
Yeah,
but long-term,
that's what they did.
The problems still exist. You didn't get a bump, and the problems still exist.
Yeah, they had the bump half of last season.
And I'm sorry, like, who's available? Like, do you have to go to England and get Graham Potter? Like, who's available right now?
I don't know. Like, I think they have an interim again. I mean, De Rossi was originally an interim, but it just
you're not going to get Klopp. He's not going.
Yeah, Klopp's taking a break.
Yeah. So
just tough start for Roma. And in the Champions League, Harry Kane has breaks all the records with Bayern Munich's 9-2, like 9-2.
Yeah, he got 4 goals in that game. 3 of them were penalties. But let's take a look. So he is now the top English goal scorer in Champions League or European Cup history with 33 goals in 45 games, passing Wayne Rooney's old mark of 30. He is the first English player to score 4 goals in a Champions League game. First English player to score a hat trick or more for a non-English team in the Champions League. First player to score a hat trick of penalties, scored his 50th, 51st, 52nd, 53rd Bayern Munich goals in his 50th appearance. So he's got 53 goals in 50 games for Bayern Munich. His 24th hat trick of his career, 5th time that he has scored back-to-back hat tricks or quadruple games. His 9th goal in 5 games this season for Bayern Munich.
Crazy numbers.
Like, it's just...
We don't talk about it because he's not Holland.
Exactly. But the numbers that he is putting up are...
just crazy.
Insane, right? So, yeah. Harry Kane, one of the greatest goal scorers of all time.
Yep.
But you can argue whether or not he has that complete game, like that complete game of like, other world-class players, but he is world-class.
Clearly,
he's world-class at what he does. And he has shown he can do it on multiple teams in multiple countries. He can do it for domestic, international. I mean,
for club and country. Yep.
Club and country are arguably you have to put him up there with the all-time English greats.
Definitely.
You just got to get him a trophy.
And then he can solidify.
I mean, it sucks that we look at individual players and say, you're not there because you haven't won a club trophy. It's a club game. I get it. But yeah, the individual, I mean, you got to look at the individual sometimes.
Yeah. Speaking of like hot strikers, Sporting's Victor Gyökeres, 9 goals, 3 assists in 7 games with Sporting this season. 12 goals, 5 assists in 9 games for club and country this season. And like, this guy's on fire. He did score against Jonathan David's Lille in the Champions League. Has this iconic, this kind of celebration. And, I mean, this guy, he has an 80 million pound release clause, I think. He's rumored to leave.
I think it's 80 million euros.
Euros, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Arsenal were linked to him, for example.
He's been linked to you pick a big club in Europe. He's been linked to them over the past 2 years.
Wasn't linked to Chelsea, unfortunately.
Here's the thing. I think if he wanted to push a move through, he could. I mean, unfortunately, when it comes to Portugal, you see Portugal is a great country for creating phenomenal players, but they move on.
Yeah, I mean, look at, the best example, Cristiano Ronaldo.
Exactly, right? But I think he's also very happy where he is.
Yeah, he didn't really push for a move, and plus it was hard to get him anyway because of the release clause. I mean, this guy's rise, like, it was a slow, gradual rise. This guy was with Broma, I can't even pronounce this team name in Stockholm, but he was a Brighton product for 3 years. Went out on loan to multiple clubs. Then he went to Coventry City, scored a bunch of goals there, and then just blew up at Sporting.
Yeah, Sporting, I mean, 37 goals, 38 games. I mean, again, you're talking about that almost a goal per game is absolutely insane.
This is like the next, a late bloomer, 26. A world-class striker in the making, and I would think he'd move to a bigger club next summer. Where? We'll see.
Sweden is... If you are looking at young players, Sweden is one of those nations where you kind of have to put your focus on. They develop class players.
Yes. And this guy, it took him some time, but class player. And see where Gyökeres, I think it looks like he won't slow down, and see if he can get that big move next summer. So that concludes this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Follow me on Twitter, Joshua00. Nathan is at @Dirk. Podcast is Terminal City FC. We'll be covering the Whitecaps as they push to the playoffs and everything soccer on the Area 51 Sports Network website. Check out our articles there. So Give us a rating and a like and a follow, whatever, on wherever podcast platform.
Please
Shout
love.
out to everyone that viewed the Facebook, YouTube, Twitter live feeds. We'll continue to do these lives. So yeah, that'll conclude this week's episode. Peace out.
Take care.